some of the politicians there have been complicit with selling a lot of the land to China, specifically.
Well, let me put this in perspective, just on a side note in regards to that. The governor's convention / symposium, I guess, was maybe a week ago. Mike Pompeo was invited, Secretary of State, and basically, here's something to think about. Mike Pompeo came out, you can Google it, Mike Pompeo's speech at the governor's convention. He basically came out and said, hey, listen, I have a list of every single governor, of all you 50 governors, who have been said you've been taking money from China. My list that I have is from China. I have a list of all of you people who have taken money from the Chinese. Now, you might want to check to see if that's legal. But not only do I have a list of you who might have taken money or did take money, I have a list of what they think about you. Some of you are listed as favorable, very favorable, hardliner, and some of you are listed as the term is not Euclid, even though I want to say that. It's ambiguous. He said the term was ambiguous. So he said, I don't know where you think you stand with them or us, but they've already figured it out for you. So what he was saying is that, hey, we know which one of you guys are going to jail soon. Just wanted you to come to us and, cooperate so we don't have to send you to jail or send you to prison for treason. Because now, here's the thing is that now that America knows it's a bioweapon, which I think they might have known 2 weeks prior to the first serious, notability that there was an issue. They knew 2 weeks prior, so that would have been they knew back in December. Actually, no, they probably knew. They knew around Thanksgiving. We knew November. They knew 2 weeks. No, I would say they knew something was up. They didn't know until the 1st of December. I would say that we either found out on the 25th, which would have been Thanksgiving, because there's a couple of little references to, something like that in regards to there's some things that we put out. And when we put those things out, it was well, why would you say that? So we let it be known we were aware. But we knew 2 weeks prior to that. But in regards to your original question, I would say that basically now that it's understood it's a bioweapon, it's 100% sure. There's no doubt. It's in the mainstream now. Now the question's being asked. Or the question has been asked. I would have to say that we're not operating on the same footing anymore. This is essentially considered an attack. So China has made an attack, although China is so compartmentalized that they're running around telling each other that America did this to us. It's no, America didn't do this to you. You did this to yourselves. And after you did it to yourselves, you're so busy trying to hide it from America and each other that you don't even have the decency to tell each other you did it because you don't want to be blamed for knowing about it and not telling sooner. Because all that's going to happen is if you're at the end of the blame chain on this in China, then you're guilty too. And that's their psychology. So in regards to that, no, we're at war with a group of people who don't want to tell us about the weapon that they're going to use on us because they made a mistake and shot themselves with it. So that'd be like me shooting myself in the leg and you saying, "What's wrong?" "No, nothing's wrong with me. Go stand over there so I can get a good shot at you." Well, after I just shot myself with the gun I'm trying to shoot you with. And that's basically what's going on. But I'm sorry, go ahead. You wanted to say something else? You wanted to ask me something else?
No, I just, I'm hoping that you'll join me again because I'm just so thankful that you come on the show and that you're my friend because it's just
I am a friend. fine. I just couldn't talk to you because it was not a good time. It wasn't safe. I was like, okay, she doesn't understand it. If I tell her, then she's got to deal with it. She has to deal with. Oh,
it's hard to wrap your brain around all of it, and so it's like we have to do another show because there's so much. There's so many different facets to this.
The reality is that, like, you know, there's a like I said, there's a temporal component here because how shall I put this? Because I don't want to give credence to anyone else who might be in the in the truth speaking community, or even somewhere between the truth speaking community and the woo woo community, because we don't have time for that. We don't have time for that. Mm-hmm. But again, I will say that I think that I think that if you wanted to look forwards or backwards in time, you would use microbes. You would use genetically engineered microbes to function in a particular type of way to allow you to get a rudimentary idea of what could happen. So I think someone is using a type of technology that uses specifically nanotechnology, not even a quantum computer, right? Not even a quantum computer, because you can't get the microbes to survive beyond the use of, you know, the nitrogen that's used, the liquid nitrogen that's being used to cool down the computers to get them into that sort of state. But a microbe, on the other hand, an extremophile, it's almost like cold fusion. It's the complete opposite direction, right? So I think what's going on here is that someone is using a temporal component that might be, which is what I suspected this during the last election, or at least the Trump presidency, but I couldn't find the words because there was still research missing, and I didn't want to make any statements about it. But I'll be honest, I think that someone is using a peculiar type of microbial tech. When I say nanotech, I'm going to be honest with you. No one's going to go out there and build a micro machine, and the reason why is because of there are certain principles and properties of the formation of biological material that I don't care how sophisticated your technology is. You're not copying that. You're not even starting from scratch. You're going to have to pull it out of the natural, ecological base. You know, and basically whatever we're dealing with here is something that's genetically engineered to produce a particular type of structure on it that produces a particular type of, wave that can be sampled and processed and turned into some actual intelligible, calculable data and used to observe things that haven't happened yet. And I think it's a sterile environment that allows it to be uninterrupted. So, I mean, I would hate to think that there's a giant computer that's plugged into like a cow's belly, but stranger biological things have been done before. However, excuse my expression, the hard line is that I find it interesting that this happened in the way it happened, while the president, in relation to all of the attacks that have been made on him, and so on and so forth, and so many other things. I don't think they're looking at the small things, but I think they're looking at the situations that relate to his death. And I think that not just his death, but the larger global agenda. And I think that they've been able to spot, this is going to be a problem. They're going to gas themselves. We need to not be over there. And they've handled it. They totally handled it correctly. But in order to handle it this correctly, I'm curious, like what you would have had to know. You would have had to know in years in advance. That's all.
And we
down to the second.
Yeah, and we suspect that. I mean, they had the Lysol campaign come out, with the SARS or the coronavirus labeled on it before they announced the outbreak. There's been a product campaign that came out prior to the virus being announced. It's so much to digest and think about. it's a lot to wrap your mind around, and I want to. You're actually in Vietnam, and I just want to touch a little bit on what you're doing to be proactive. As I know you mentioned you're going to quit smoking.
Well, I mean, I have to quit smoking. Otherwise, if I did have the virus, I would be feeding it. See, so we're talking about radiological isotope triggers in the smoke, in the cigarette smoke, and the secondhand smoke, right? We're talking about 5G networks that, or even high radiological capacity. So, I mean, I'm really leery about going back home, unless I can make sure that I have my old apartment, which is, 16th floor. So it's above the normal broadcast depth for Wi-Fi. You know what I mean? So, cause I have to be like, here's the thing. I may not ever get it, but if I've been somewhere where it's living on my personal effects and I bring it somewhere, it's not like, that's the thing, is that this is a nanotechnology. This is not a virus. And that's what really boggles my mind about it, because we have to stop thinking microorganism. We have to start thinking wet machine, wet cybernetic machine. That's what we have to start thinking. It's a nano machine. This thing is so far removed. I mean, it's got biological components.
Would it be something similar to like a GIF, like programmable flesh? Like, would you describe it that way?
I think it is set to. I think based on the research, my sound scientific, statement would be that it could vary.
Uh-oh. Oh, no. Okay, well, we lost him. That was, it's awesome. It's mind-blowing whenever I get the opportunity to speak with David. And if you're tuning in, I want to thank you so much for coming on the air. I promised everyone that I would go as long as the battery life would go. Yeah, he's so brave to come on the show and so gracious to offer us all of his insight and time. And keep him in your prayers. He's currently in Vietnam, but I will be wanting to have him back on the show. Brenda, everyone in the live chat, Lisa, hi, Milton, Timothy. It's so nice to see all you guys there. Thank you for tuning in with me on the live chat. I will be looking to have David on the podcast again on the show. And thanks so much for tuning in to the Porthole to Justice. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and I'm also on Patreon. And I'd be so grateful if you supported our content. And also prayers for you, Brenda, and I'm so sorry for your loss. And we'll be praying about this and for all of those in the community that are enduring all of the backlash and targeting and so forth. Always prayers for you, and tune in for 20 on 20 on the Zeph Report once a month, the 20th of every month, for Human 2020 to end global slavery and human trafficking worldwide. And thanks so much for tuning in. This has been another episode of Porthole to Justice, Off the Cuff.